All right, guys, it begins. It begins. You have the left base is now being loud and aggressive and vocal, and they're saying, no more Joe Biden. Time to step aside. Okay, you beat Trump in 2020. Guess what? You can't win another election. You're half dead. You're a status quo defender. Let's move on to somebody who's actually going to bring about real change, not just tweaks around the edges, not just little bits and pieces of positive policy here and there. And there's a new ad. So this new ad is called Don't Run, Joe. Let's watch.
It's absolutely critical that we don't allow a Republican to win the White House in 2024.
I'm concerned with Joe Biden's low polling.
With his low popularity, it's way too much of a gamble.
If he runs, the election is at serious risk.
Joe? All right, so let me just pause here to say, it's actually not exactly true that he's polling terribly. It is true that every time you ask voters, should Biden run again, it's overwhelming that they're like, no, he shouldn't run again. Definitely don't run again. But it's also true that he kind of has a standard approval rating like almost any other president at this point in his presidency. So I actually saw a high poll of 50%, which was done by Rasmussen. That came out like a week or two ago. I was stunned by that. But the average is probably more like 44 or something like that, which, keep it real, is kind of standard. It is kind of standard. It's right in like Obama territory, Bill Clinton territory. So I just want to be totally accurate here. It's not true that like, oh, he just has bad polling. No, he's been all over the map. Sometimes he's had very low polling, as low as 33%. Sometimes he's had high polling, like I just said, as high as 50%. He's kind of all over the place. But the part that is true is that they do, every time you ask people, should Biden run in 2024, a preposterously high number says, yeah, he shouldn't run then. Okay, let's keep going.
It's way too much of a gamble.
If he runs, the election is at serious risk.
Joe Biden representing the status quo in 2024 simply won't cut it.
We can't afford to risk the White House to a Republican who could defeat status quo Joe.
The threat of the GOP.
All right, so let me just pause again to say, I think Donald Trump would be the weakest candidate to run against Biden again. I think Biden would very, very likely beat Trump again, because Trump has become so fucking insane over the past year or so. All he does all day long is retweet QAnon stuff on Truth Social. All he does is talk about terminating the Constitution and getting placed back in as president. He doesn't have any normie touch anymore. He doesn't have any fake populism anymore. He's just like a conspiracy grandpa now. And so I'm not as threatened, but I don't feel threatened by him at all. In terms of DeSantis, I feel very threatened by him. Honestly, I feel threatened by a generic Republican. Because in the last election, Democrats did better than expected, but it was the generic Republicans who cleaned house and did the best. And so that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of DeSantis. I'm afraid of any like generic Republican who might somehow get through the primary. So again, a little more nuanced than what they're saying here. But overall, I think I agree with their message, and I'll get to more on that in a minute.
Won't cut it.
We can't afford to risk the White House to a Republican who could defeat status quo Joe.
The threat of the GOP.
Status quo Joe that's a good way to refer to him. I like that nickname because it's true.
Has become all too obvious. The stakes could not be higher.
Our ideas are way more popular than Joe Biden is.
Joe Biden running undermines the Democratic Party's chances in 2024.
There's no question that we have a climate emergency. It's a question of willingness to do something about it.
It's not the time for half measures. All Americans need universal health care now.
Yes, I love that message. That's exactly right.
There's no room to compromise when our abortion rights are on the line.
We can't afford to lose. Don't run, Joe.
Don't run, Joe.
Don't run, Joe.
Don't run, Joe.
All right, there you go. Don'tRunJoe.org, paid for by Action for a Progressive Future. So to be clear, I don't know anything about this group. Obviously, it's some sort of progressive PAC or whatever. So do I agree with this ad? The short answer is yes, I do. Now, unlike many other people who are sort of in this left-wing media space, I've been, what I would argue, is nuanced, and I will tell you when I think Joe Biden did an unequivocally good thing. So I could list, basically 20 or 30 different provisions that have been passed into law, which I think are definitely positive, which I think Biden deserves credit for, right? 15% corporate minimum tax rate. That was part of the IRA. Lowering prescription drug prices for seniors. That was also part of the IRA. He signed an executive order which raised the minimum wage for federal employees and federal contractors to $15 an hour. That was phenomenal. The Supreme Court slapped down the ability of the EPA to do their job. They said, you guys can't regulate greenhouse gas emissions. And then Biden and the Democrats fixed that by slipping into the IRA a provision that said, we're defining these carbon emissions as a pollutant, and so now we can regulate them again. So look, my point here is, I think I'm fair. I think I'm nuanced. I'll tell you when Joe Biden does something good, and I will continue to do that. I don't care if people come after me for stating things that, in my view, are total facts, okay? But having said that, the broader narrative still remains, and the broader narrative is Joe Biden is what I would refer to as a status quo manager. So he will give you the left flank of neoliberal corporatism, but at the end of the day, it's still neoliberal corporatism. Okay? I liked when he did the student loan debt reduction, but, I wish you would get rid of all the student loan debt. Of course, the courts look like they're going to slap it down, and then what are you going to do, Joe? Are you just going to throw your hands up and walk away and say, well, I tried? Because that's the problem, is that we can't afford that mentality anymore. FDR threatened to pack the court, and just the threat made the Supreme Court allow through the New Deal. So what are you going to do if the court slaps down your student loan debt reduction? Are you going to threaten them with court stripping? Are you going to sign another executive order using the 1965 Higher Education Act to get the student loan debt reduction through? How are you going to fight? What are you going to do? And Joe Biden, even though he's done some things I would consider good, overall, he's a status quo manager. He's the left flank of neoliberalism and corporatism, which is still neoliberalism and corporatism, and we cannot afford that at this point in time. Like this ad says, no, we need universal health care. We need free college. We need to eliminate student loan debt. We need to eliminate medical debt. We need higher wages. We need you to be fighting for the PRO Act. We need you. Joe Biden, through executive order, can lower all drug prices in the country, not just for senior citizens. And not just like 7 or 8 drugs or whatever the fuck. He can lower all prescription drug prices through executive order. He already has that authority. He's already been granted that authority. So he should do that, but he's not doing it. There are a million more things he can do, and there are a million ways he can actually fight harder for this agenda. But ultimately, look, he's a product of standard insider Washington politics. He will go with the wins, and in some ways that makes him better than Obama and better than Bill Clinton, but nowhere near FDR, nowhere near Bernie Sanders, nowhere near what we need. So I don't want him to run again. And if he does run again, which I think he is going to run again, I hope he has a left challenger. I hope, say, for example, Marianne Williamson runs. We need a left challenger that can consolidate the youth vote and apply massive pressure to Joe Biden to get him to be even further left-wing, or hopefully, could beat Joe Biden. I know that's a difficult path. I know that's almost impossible, but I also know it's worth trying. Because just like what we saw with Bernie Sanders' 2 presidential campaigns, he did shift the Overton window in the Democratic Party to the left more, and he has forced Biden's hand on a lot of these issues that Biden never would have done previously. He never would have done the student loan debt reduction if it wasn't for pressure from both the Green Party, left activists, and then Bernie Sanders' 2 presidential runs. So there are no downsides to a left challenge to Joe Biden. There are none. There are none whatsoever. So I agree with the ad. He shouldn't run. I don't think that's very controversial. But if he does run, I hope he gets a left challenge. And certainly I'll do everything I can to support a left challenge. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be fair anymore. Like, I'm still going to be fair and tell you when I think Joe Biden does a good thing. But it's too little too late. Everything is too little too late. Everything is status quo management. Everything is the left flank of neoliberalism and corporatism. We need, at the very least, social democracy. We need massive reform from the top down in our system to make this country more fair, more equitable, and more rational. Anyway, there you have it. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.